It's open mic night tonight, and tonight we have a dear friend, another a dear friend of mine she's younger, but I look up to her because she has credentials like no other person has, and I think I've memorized them by heart. She was president of the student government of Silliman University. When she was younger, when she was in high school, she was editor-in-chief of the official paper, the official publication. When she was 13 or 14, she published her first book, and she was president of the student government. And I said that, and then she was summa cum laude, and not only that, she was Miss Silliman. So that's probably it's all the top honors, all the top positions that you can occupy in the entire university. And after that, she went on to become, she was also an Ayala Young Leader, and she went on to become one of the 10 outstanding students of the Philippines. But she did not stop there. She took the Foreign Service exams in 2013 and 2014. The Foreign Service exams, by the way, is considered to be the most difficult board exams, mainly because of the passing rate, even more difficult supposedly than the bar exams. And she topped that. And the last I heard, pending the results of the last Foreign Service exam, she is actually the top notcher across the board. So she holds that record. So oh my gosh, right? Oh my gosh. And so beauty and brains, because summa cum laude and Miss Silliman. And I think she is really a dead ringer for actress Eva Green, Miss Stacy Danica Alcantara.
Hello, Mike.
Stace!
Finally!
Finally! Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Welcome to the show. It is an honor to be in the presence of a young diplomat, decorated.
The pleasure is mine.
Who looks like evergreen. So, Stace, how has it been since you assumed your role as a Foreign Service officer? Because I know you postponed it a bit to finish your work in a multinational company. You were winding down,
Yes.
no? Your work with a multinational
That's right.
company, and then so you delayed. You were number one, but you delayed your start a bit. And,
Yes.
And as soon as you joined the Department of Foreign Affairs, you became. You had to go through your cadetship,
Yes.
and it's done.
It's done.
Okay.
I finished it last July. And so far, I really like the work in the Philippine Foreign Service. I feel that it's exactly the kind of work that keeps me going.
Yeah.
I'm currently with the Office of Public Diplomacy. So I'm with the Public Affairs and Media Affairs Division. And one of my biggest projects right now is to handle the Digital Diplomacy Desk.
Okay.
So I found that really interesting because it's a marriage of two of my most favorite things. The first one is social psychology.
Which you have a master's degree in now?
It's ongoing.
Ongoing?
Yes. So we all know that when it comes to social media, it's more psychology than technology.
That is true.
And the second thing, which I really like about digital diplomacy, is that it touches on branding and impression formation. So I like it a lot because with my background in a multinational company and my fascination for advertising
And your undergrad is in
mass communication.
Yeah.
So it's exactly the kind of specialization that I wanted to focus on even before I joined a multinational company.
Yeah. But deciding to join the Foreign Service, wanting to be a diplomat, when did it dawn on you? Because otherwise, if that was a plan of yours in high school when you're authoring a book, then you would have taken, let's say, international relations or political science, the traditional routes to the Foreign Service. So it was not at the time your plan.
No, I wouldn't say so. So when I was in elementary school, my mother, who has such a big influence in my decisions, she originally wanted me to become a certified public accountant and a lawyer.
That's a common dream.
That's a common dream.
Yeah.
And at that time, well, I didn't understand what that particular profession entailed. So every time someone would ask me what I wanted to be when I grow up, that would be my default answer. Later on in high school, when I got really involved in the school paper, so that's when I said, I'm not going to be an accountant. I need to find a particular course that's fit with my passion. So there were two choices. It was either creative writing or journalism, mass communication.
Excuse me, yeah.
And so I opted for mass communication because the field is more diverse, and with the degree in mass communication, I thought I'd be able to get into marketing. I'd be able to get into
it has
other
more
fields.
options.
It has more options.
Yeah, it's not just the typical output is you join media,
Yes.
because every company has to communicate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And right now, we all know that information is the currency
Exactly.
of the world. So at that time, it really struck my interest. So it was also in college when one of my professors first mentioned about a particular schoolmate who was several years my senior, around 10 years my
Okay.
senior. And that was the first time I heard about the Foreign Service Officers exam.
Okay.
At that time, I didn't really know what being an ambassador or a diplomat entailed. So what struck my interest was that they told me it was about traveling, and it had a lot to do with working in the government. And we all know that people hold this particular stereotype. People have this particular idea when you talk about benefits in the government. So that was admittedly, that was one of my hesitations. So I had to shelve the idea first. And then I decided to pursue a career in a multinational company, which
Okay.
was sales and marketing. I discovered that it really wasn't what I wanted to do. It really wasn't the career that I wanted to pursue.
But I'm curious, why didn't you, or maybe you did, no? But why didn't you try to apply? Because I think you would have been a shoo-in for a career in broadcast, in media, because you have outstanding credentials. You're Miss Siliman. In other words, TV is unfortunately about looks, no? But you have not just looks, but substance, and you're very articulate. So why did you even consider, after getting your degree in mass communication, to pursue a career in let's say as a news anchor or as a journalist in print?
Well, it did cross my mind, but then
But I know
again-
that you wrote for the same paper I used to write
Right.
for. You contributed, but more in the soft pages. You did
Yes.
opinion writing, but you were more
Lifestyle.
travel.
That's right.
Yeah, but what about broadcast?
Well, it did cross my mind, but then it also dawned on me that most of the careers in broadcast, if you really wanted to excel in broadcast, you have to go to Manila, to Metro Manila. When I was in college, I wanted to avoid Manila at all costs.
We all do. But now you're still there.
Exactly. I still ended up in Metro Manila, and I discovered it's not,
Not
as
so
bad,
bad,
as I thought it was. So, well, going back, one reason that I also kept postponing venturing into the foreign service was that I really wanted to avoid any kind of profession that required a board exam, because I was so scared to
Because
fail.
you're always number one. You're always number one in anything you do.
People were already telling me how difficult the Foreign Service Officers exam is, given that the passing rate generally is around 1 to 2%.
Yeah.
So I was really scared of that. I was scared to flunk the Foreign Service Officers exam.
Luli Arroyo, by the way, the daughter of former President Arroyo, also topped her batch's foreign service exam. And I think at the time, maybe the passing rate was 3%, thereabouts.
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe she topped, and there were like maybe just 2 or 3 of them who passed. Top 1 of 3 who passed, or something like that. I don't know. So
Yes.
you are a lot like that. I think that's something that a lot of achievers or overachievers contend with. The prospect of a board exam, and because our friend Ryan Milleflores, he's very successful, but he was magna cum laude, I think, in accountancy, but he never took the CPA
Right.
exams because he felt he didn't need it, and at the same time said, because if I'm number 2, I'm going to kill myself. Of course, he's joking, but you need to emerge as number 1. It's quite similar to yours, I guess.
I guess, though in my case, it wasn't about being number 2 that I was scared of. I was scared that I would not pass.
So you
the
would have been
exam.
okay to pass.
Yes, that was my primary concern. Because foreign service, diplomacy, international relations, the first time my mentor, Ambassador Tony Villamor, former ambassador to Saudi Arabia, the first time he gave me a book, everything, all the concepts were really new to me. So when I was reviewing for the FSOE, that was really my first time to encounter many
Of the terms.
of the terms, many of the concepts that were covered in the exam.
And then there's a FOLA, diba? There's a FOLA foreign language component
Yes.
pa in the foreign service exam, and you are not just conversant, but you're fluent in Spanish, right?
Well, with more practice.
But it was both spoken and written foreign language, right?
It was only for the written exam. But the test, I would say, had a different difficulty level.
So it was really difficult.
I would say so. Because
And it's spread across several weeks, am I right?
the written exam spread across 3 days.
Okay.
But you have 2 exams per day. And for each exam, they would give us around 20 to 30 questions,
Okay.
essay questions.
Oh, essay, okay.
And then we pick
Handwritten.
handwritten. We have to pick around 10 to 15. There are some exams like the FOLA, the English and Filipino. They have they have an additional part, which is a test on grammar.
Okay.
So let's say when I took up Spanish, so part A was about grammar. It was about the proper use of idiomatic expressions.
Okay.
And then the last part is the essay part. So they asked us, cite a particular societal problem in the city that you live in and propose a solution.
And you have to answer in Spanish.
Yes. So that's a glimpse of the exam.
Oh my gosh, I mean, I remember Ambassador Benedicto one time when I was serving government, and since my job had a lot of, it entailed a lot of foreign relations and bilateral and multilateral functions, with various governments and counterparts from various governments. He said, "Why don't you take it up?" I said,
Why don't you?
That's my answer. I have maybe the same apprehension. I think I would be okay to take the rest of it, but the foreign language part, I'm not yet as confident that to take the foreign service exam, especially for the foreign language part. I mean, if it involves writing an essay in a foreign language, and then there's grammar and there's it's something I have to work on before and prepare for. Maybe the rest may come easier since I've already had experience in government, so the terminologies wouldn't be new, and the situations, etc. So we'll see. But anyway, we have to pause for the short break. Open mic. We'll be right back with Stacy, Danica Alcantara, our very young diplomat. We're back here on Open Mic with Stacy, Danica Alcantara. She is with the Office of Public Diplomacy of the Department of Foreign Affairs. So it is an interesting time for diplomacy.
Definitely.
For the Philippines.
Yes.
And for the world.
In general.
Because things are changing,
Rapidly.
The status quo has been overruled. And we have new leadership models emerging everywhere. So, what are your thoughts? What are your musings about this change, this widespread change? Why do you think it happened? What does it mean to be a diplomat at this particular time? Is it more challenging? Is it more exciting?
Well, personally, I find it more exciting. I guess because I'm the kind of person who really loves to embrace change. Not just any kind of change, but I like it drastic and I like it fast. So one time we had a conversation with my fellow young diplomats, and then we talked about this social Darwinism and this, that you have to really adapt.
Evolution.
You have to embrace this change in the times. You can no longer cling to the tried and tested methods.
Exactly.
Because even if we talk with our colleagues and contemporaries, our mentors in the foreign service, people would agree that our times today, it's already business unusual.
That's a nice term.
It's already business unusual. You cannot cling on to what they did 30, 40 years ago, even 10 years ago. Let's say, for example, in digital diplomacy. So it's a relatively new field, and it's a relatively new subset of public diplomacy. And it's no surprise that there were a lot of people who were a bit apprehensive about it. Because, as we all know, back in the 30 years ago, 20 years ago, diplomacy is a field that really thrives in, well, smokes and mirrors.
Yeah, that's true.
Protocol. You have to make sure that
most stringent rules.
Exactly, and you can't be all out when it comes to information.
That's true. And public diplomacy entails a lot of engagement
Exactly.
with a public, most of whom, I'm sorry to say, are ignorant. And you don't blame them, because I mean, diplomacy is very highfalutin. It's a very elitist thing. No? I mean, it's so. Although it has wide-ranging implications on the life that we live, as a product of diplomacy, relations, foreign relations, but it is to the common person, to the common tao, it is so far removed from the daily struggles and the needs, like food, shelter, clothing, peace and order, health.
Exactly.
They don't see the connection right away. So then you would have to deal with a public who is like that is like that.
Yes, and that is our challenge in our office, because times are indeed changing. And as I have told some of the people in the department, in the 21st century, the most powerful countries are not those that can colonize territories, but these are actually the countries who are able to colonize minds and shape opinions.
Soft power.
Soft power, smart power.
The United States has been extremely good at soft power with pop culture, Hollywood,
Exactly.
music. I think the UK is not too far behind, and the Queen, aside from being a functioning as head of state, has also become a very powerful symbolism for the United Kingdom's soft power.
Yes.
What do you think is our? Do you think that we have soft power, the Philippines, and in what area?
I think we do have the potential to use soft power and to be able to really maximize its potential.
I think Lea Salonga is an export for a Philippine export in soft power, because she is the personification of perfection.
And well, in my
she shows
opinion,
that we are talented, no?
Exactly. In my opinion, we also have to do what we do in marketing, which is niche marketing.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure that your efforts in soft power are targeted towards a particular audience. So let's say, for example, how can the Philippines become really powerful in terms of soft power? Let's say, for example, in certain countries that look up to us. So let's say, for example, we have East Timor. I guess one of the ways that we can really share with them our culture, our values, is through partnering with them in capability building.
Exactly.
In, let's say, for example, social entrepreneurship, because we excel in it. And a lot, we can partner with them in terms of teaching the community how we do things, how we put up social enterprises that don't only give life to the community, but it's also very sustainable.
Yeah.
And there's also a cultural aspect to that.
For those who are watching and who are not familiar with the concept of soft power, there's soft power and there's hard power. Hard power is military might. No? And soft power includes diplomacy. You know?
Yes.
Includes diplomacy and other soft components, you know, that help a country's position in the world. You know? That help advance a country's position in the world. So, but the thing is, I think the Philippines, we should master soft power simply because we do not have a lot of hard power.
And it has a very big potential of making a difference. I'm seeing a potential in gastro diplomacy. So, food.
And Instagram is helping.
Exactly. And Filipinos love food. We have such a rich culinary culture. And we all know that the way to another culture's heart is through the stomach.
Yeah.
So, our menu, our range of dishes, it's also very globalized, so to speak, because we have so many influences. So, it's very easy for us to build common ground.
True.
In order to make more friends.
I do think, and I don't know what you think about this, but I do think that Duterte, that our president, President Duterte, despite notions that he is undiplomatic, uncouth, you know, despite these notions from because he's being set against a traditional standard, a traditional peg or mold for what a leader ought to be, but he is really breaking new ground. But in my opinion, there's so much potential for soft power there because his attitude and his character has gained global attention. So I think it is crucial, and I don't know if you would agree with me, for his communications in our foreign affairs to be able to translate that popularity and that rock star status, or even maybe fear or interest in our president, because he's so out of character, you know, based on our past leaders, into something, into a formidable force for soft power.
Exactly. And I think the fact that he is so different from the usual mold, I think that's what really made him memorable.
Exactly.
And that's what make people talk about him a lot more, not only within us in the Philippines, but more importantly, across the globe.
So for me, there is some discomfort, true, and I get it. You know, when you study the moment, you may be confused, and then you get it, and then you step back and try to see the bigger picture, past and probably future, and then you start to appreciate the possibilities that someone like him affords us. Like, for example, I don't think that Duterte and Trump are the same. Trump, whatever people's opinion is of him, opinions are of him, but Trump has lived a life committed to profit all his life as a businessman. Duterte has lived a life committed to public service. At their core, they're very different. But of course, you know, they're from the same generation of men, 70 plus years old. We also have a Tito who's like that, a bit misogynistic, but they really do respect women. It's just that's how they grew up, and you can teach an old dog new tricks. Not to justify it, but they just have to grow old and die, and then we have a new, you know, a new culture that's emerging, that's more respectful and more that sees women more as equals. That's good. But like when Trump won, in one of the major news outlets in the States, just maybe the next hour after he won, and then he said, they flashed Trump, the American Duterte. And I was like, oh my gosh, for the first time, the American president is the American version of the Philippine president.
Which doesn't happen all the time.
It's never happened before. And then another network, the first world leaders congratulate President-elect Donald Trump. And the screen was split into three. And you have China, Xi Jinping, and Russia, Vladimir Putin. And then you have Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte. So, see, I mean, they say, oh, it's not, it's to infamy. But no. Good or bad publicity is still publicity, but for me, it's how we translate that publicity.
And how we package it.
How we package it. And then, so now, we are not being taken lightly. We are being taken seriously.
And one of the positive things about it is that people have become curious about the Philippines.
Yes.
People have become curious about how the president's mind works. And I have even found out, through reading a lot, that because of the president, a lot of people there was also this phase when a lot of people were really curious about the psyche of the Bisaya.
True. So it's an eye opener, no?
Yes.
And for the Philippines as a country, I feel it is a coming of age.
And it may come as quite a shock to many, especially those who are very used to the usual typecast, the usual mold of a statesman. But you know, sometimes when you have these kinds of deviations from what people are used to,
Change happens.
that's what gets people talking.
And that's what gets things done. Most of the most celebrated men and women throughout history are the ones who had some level of crazy.
Yes.
And who were not scared of figuring into some sort of controversy. Those who affected the most change. Steve Jobs is awful, you know, to a certain degree to people. But he has revolutionized the world.
Exactly.
I'm not saying that is awful, but what I'm saying is, like Tita Winnie Monsod, no? I respect her, but I disagree with her politics lately. She wrote something about the president's mental health. I don't know if it's true or if it's gossip, but again, Steve Jobs wrote about the crazies, no?
Exactly.
Round pegs and square holes, something like that. Those who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones who actually do.
And these are the people who don't really get that, they don't get affected so much by public opinion.
True.
They just go on and do what they feel is right.
And what they feel they need to do.
And what they feel they need to do.
So it's interesting for me that there is some dissonance between what let's say some youth leaders or students or the teachers in Manila, what they've been trying to promote, no? Like that's again celebrating crazy, celebrating being different, trailblazing. When we were in school, those were concepts that were taking center stage, no? And now that we have someone who is like that, it seems that there is a resistance. But again, I feel that people like you, especially in the Office of Public Diplomacy, in foreign relations, and also in communications in Malacanang, are in a better position, or in the best position, to be able to translate this phenomenon that's happening into potent soft power weapon
Exactly.
for the Philippines.
It's something that can get people talking.
Yes.
And we were discussing about, a friend and I were discussing about this a while ago, about the rise, this trend of populist leaders.
Yes.
So, well, during our discussion, one of the themes that really emerged was that you have populist leaders because their branding is so strong and so powerful. The imagery that they convey to the people. Let's say, for example, President Duterte, his symbol was only the fist. So he didn't have a lot of other symbols involved. And that was really something powerful for the people, because it already conveyed what he wanted to convey.
The
fight, and that he was someone who doesn't beat around the bush, but it's he had a very direct approach.
The symbolism was very powerful.
Exactly. And the message, the slogan, change is coming. No, he had no frills. Plain and simple. Or for Donald Trump, you have to make America great again. The message is very simple.
It resonated.
And it resonated.
For better or for worse, it resonated, no? Whether it struck a raw nerve or it incited something ugly in the American psyche, that remains to be seen. I mean, well, we're seeing some of it, but you take away the emotions and you study the sloganeering, no, of populist leaders, and
the branding,
and you try, and then you know why? Because I think it's important, and you know this more than I do, because you're taking up social psychology. Because when you do that, you take away emotion and you just look at the sloganeering and how it attracts voters. Then you get to know the people more.
And it also takes off from what majority of the population are experiencing
True.
at the moment. So I guess that's also a reason why it resonated.
So, oh my gosh, this is a topic that we can go on and on, but we have we have to pause for another break before we go to our last gap with Stacy from the DFA. We're back here at Open Mic with Stacy Danica Alcantara. So Stace, we were talking about populist leaders, and maybe that's why some of the more traditional, I don't mean it to be derogatory, but traditional politicians, meaning those who follow a traditional mold, let's say Mar Rojas, who was a Wharton education. He actually went to Wharton, but he has a bachelor's degree, not a master's degree, but that means he has an undergrad, which is still a graduate of an undergrad. And then Hillary Clinton, who she went to Yale.
A lot of prestige. George Washington.
Yeah, she's prepared for the job, no? So she is the most fit if you follow the traditional mold of what a president ought to be. But sometimes, that's why when you study the sloganeering of these populist leaders and it resonates with the people, it makes you think about those who prepared for the job and how detached or out of touch they are from what the people who they intend to serve really need and want from their leader.
Exactly, because when you are in politics, it's all about influence. It's all about social influence. So for you to be successful in connecting with your voters, you as a candidate and your communications team, you have to work together. You have to have a good grasp of human behavior, because your message, for it to be effective, has to target what drives human behavior.
So, taking all of these into account and considering your role in foreign affairs, specific to the Office of Public Diplomacy, how do you intend? What are your plans aside from coming? I know you came up with your book. It's like your guidelines for public diplomacy, right? For digital diplomacy.
We recently released a handbook on Philippine public diplomacy.
Yeah.
So it's a compilation of the best practices and the experiences of the different diplomats, our contributors, and even some media practitioners.
And it includes digital.
It has a section on digital, but at the time that it was released, digital diplomacy hasn't fully bloomed yet. So we have a lot of efforts right now in terms of really maximizing the potential of digital diplomacy. And I would say that we have many pioneering efforts.
Good. So, that's a handbook. What are the challenges so far in, example, managing your Facebook page?
The challenges, well, I would say it's more of planning out these social media campaigns. So that's my primary work, aside from overseeing the visual branding and how we deliver the message.
Because it's a slippery slope, huh?
Exactly. And there's a lot of room for creativity. So I would say I really emphasize it on our team to have the creative confidence that as the team lead, I do not have the monopoly of ideas. So I try to solicit and crowdsource ideas
From your team.
from our team, but that's not our only way of planning the social media campaigns. So we're also very quantitative. We try to get the analytics, the results, social sentiment from our social media accounts, and then we study it. We examine what are the topics that resonate with our publics.
Yeah, I have a question. Like, for example, what's the protocol? You see all these trolls. How do you differentiate from a troll, or are you able to, from a troll and an actual account, no? That does not that comes to your page, though maybe ignorant or misinformed, but who comes to your page not to attack, but really with a valid question or a valid assertion that you maybe need to disabuse, no, or correct. And what is the protocol there? And for example, if I commented on the Facebook page of the DFA, do I, and then example, I question the president's agenda, foreign policy agenda specific to China, will you take the time out to explain to me? And how do you know that I'm not just being a troll or not just being a noisy critic, and that I deserve an explanation from you?
Well, first, we put into place moderation guidelines to guide the discussion and the debate in social
So sometimes
media.
you delete obscene comments?
Yes. Comments that go against our moderation guidelines. Let's say, for example, you have comments that contain obscene material. So we have to.
But those that disagree but are misinformed, you take the time out to explain to them?
There are times that we do take the time. Most of the time we do that. So
That's a protocol. Or that's a judgment call. What is it?
it's also a judgment call. Because social media, digital media is there to empower and encourage discussion. So
I you know where I'm coming from? I'm coming from where the official Gazette figured into. The online version of the official Gazette. They got into trouble during the birthday of
yes.
President Marcos because of a post, and then it became very controversial, and then it reached, it spilled over from social media, the reactions, it spilled over to mainstream media, and so that's the sort of thing that I'm curious about. How do you deal with that? How do you prevent it? What are the protocols in place? Because it can now in this age, unlike before, there's just an official statement that's read on TV. People's reactions they keep it to themselves, or the most that they can do is discuss it amongst their friends. They can't openly challenge it.
Exactly.
And because now when you openly challenge an official statement, and depending on how the specific government agency concerned responds, it can quickly spiral out of control.
Exactly.
Like what happened with the official Gazette.
Well, aside from our community manager who checks all the messages, all the comments, I personally also check it. So there are times that I personally answer. And then you can tell whether a particular comment comes from a troll because you already noticed that pattern in the behavior.
And
so
they don't respond to reason.
They don't respond to reason. They have comments that are totally irrelevant from the post. We encourage our publics, if they have comments, suggestions, complaints, to direct it through our private message, because that's a better format for us to discuss.
It's more proper.
And it's more proper. And then, let's say, for example, you have dissenting opinions. We do not have any problem with that because we encourage more ideas. We encourage a lively discussion. For as long as it doesn't contain any obscene materials, for as long as it doesn't really go out of bounds with our moderation guidelines. And the moderation guidelines that we have, it's common across all entities with Facebook
That's
accounts.
Right. Let's shift to maybe a lighter topic.
Okay.
Who is your peg? Who is your model for what a diplomat ought to be?
I would have to say that it would have to be my first...
Local and international.
Okay. For local, I'd have to say it would be my first boss in the Department of Foreign Affairs. So it's Ambassador Marciano Painor.
Oh, I love Ambassador Painor.
I learned so much from him, and I consider every time that I have a chance to work with him, I always think I have to work hard. I want to work hard because I don't want to disappoint Ambassador Painor. I want him to be proud of me, and I also want to be like him in terms of
Efficiency.
dealing with people.
Very good.
He's fantastic with people. He knows how to motivate people.
Is he going to be the NOC, the National Organizing Committee Chair again of the ASEAN Summit next year?
as far as I know,
Because he was on top of things in 2007 when the 12th ASEAN Summit was held in
Yes.
Cebu. And I was had the privilege of being part of the NOC. So
Exactly.
I agree with you. With all of my heart, that Ambassador
he
Painar
is such a role model.
one of the best diplomats that we have at
And
present.
he doesn't complicate things.
Internationally.
Internationally, I would have to say I really admire Madeline
Oh my
Albright.
gosh. Thank you for recommending Mighty and the Almighty. I think you were the one who recommended that to me. It's such a good read, no? It talks about the role of religion in diplomacy.
Exactly.
And people get this, no? The people who always spout separation of church and state. Yes, there is. Constitutionally in the Philippines, there is a separation of church and state. And basically it means that it doesn't mean that the church cannot comment, because any church can, being part of a democracy, being part of a country. But essentially it means that there's no state-sponsored religion. There's no official religion like they do in the United Kingdom, where Anglicanism, the Church of England, is the official religion of the head of state, the Queen. So that's essentially what it is. But we should not limit ourselves, because a lot of what's at stake, no, in global diplomacy has got to do with religion.
And you cannot divorce people from religion.
True.
Because, let's say, for example, one theory in social psychology, it's called social representation. It's about how people make sense of a very complicated world through culture, through religion, through symbolism. So it's very difficult if you want to divorce people from religion, because religion is a way of life. Religion is a way for people to make sense of what is happening around them.
And a lot of societies, civilized societies, were actually formed
Yes.
around religious beliefs.
Exactly. Culture, the culture of many societies, norms,
Traditions,
it's built on the bedrock of religion.
Even human rights, even when human rights and religion often clash now, but these rights, the universal rights that we have, some of them have very religious
Underpinnings.
yeah, and also the provenance is very
Exactly.
religious, no? Unfortunately, it's all that we have, and I hope that you had, you enjoyed my conversation with this brilliant young woman, a rising star in the foreign service. But wait, before I close, I have to ask all of you. Hopefully, you can watch and follow our shows live online through live stream at www.livestream.com/mytv30/on-air. And please do like us on our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/mytv/mychannel. So thank you, Stace.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, and I wish you all the best as you
Thank you.
venture into the wonderful world of diplomacy.
Yes.
And I'm excited to hear for when you are finally posted in your first foreign posting. You know?
Hopefully,
Maybe
soon.
we will be at some point in the future, UN ambassador to the United Nations, or ambassador to the United States, or foreign secretary.
We'll see what the future holds.
When I become president, you are a
forward to
shoo-in. No, definitely. But Saul Delantar, who I'm taping, who we're having next year, for our New Year special. She wanted to be UN Secretary General. So is that something you want? Because we'd have to lobby for that. We'd have to see.
Well, personally, I would prefer a post that would really put me at the forefront of public diplomacy or communication. So,
What?
any spokesperson post,
Yeah, but when I become president, you have to be there.
well, I would
Just kidding.
accept it with all my heart.
You topped the shortlist, I know. Thank you, Stace,
Thank
and
you.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
To everyone, it was another episode of Open Mic. Until next week, good night and Godspeed.